Hello, my name is Brian Stone, and today we're going to talk to you about OneStop MPS Portal and HP's Smart Device Services, or SDS. Some of you may have seen the shorter video that we've done for HP, and some of the areas that we're going to see today we have covered in that, but we're going to look in a bit more detail, get a bit more understanding of some of the more advanced features of SDS, some of the use cases, and give you a bit more of an understanding of how we can do things such as batch processing. So really pushing SDS to really benefit you as a dealer by being able to manage multiple devices at the same time within your fleet. OneStop is available either as a hosted model, which is hosted by yourselves, or can be self-hosted by yourselves if you prefer that, either in your data center or in your office if that's what you prefer and how you have the infrastructure. And it's available in multiple languages. We're going to have a look at today the basics of where the SDS features are, how you get access to them. We're going to have a look at some of those functions such as rebooting a device, updating firmware for single or multiple devices. We're going to look at batch configuration, so how we can configure multiple devices at the same time, and we're going to look at how we can do that, why we might want to do that, and how we've implemented that to make that as easy as possible. We're going to have a look at predictive alerts, see how the information is presented and how we can utilize that to make sure when we're going out to potentially fix a problem or a potential problem, we make sure we have the right tools, the right parts, the right skill sets. And we're going to have a look at the report a problem applet. This runs on the device and allows a user to report directly to us via the device that there's potentially an issue, and we can then follow that up, raise a service call and resolve that to the customer's satisfaction. When you log on to OneStop, you're immediately presented with the dashboard. This gives you an overview of all the devices that you as a user can see. Those that have seen the previous video, this may be familiar. We can see how many devices we have, the status of those devices, whether we have consumable orders, whether we have job tickets that have been raised, the status of the agent, and we get an overview of our device usage as well, which as you can see is pretty flat and has been for the last couple of months, as these devices are sitting in a currently locked lab at HP. What we're interested in here is you can see we have HP SDS devices, and we now have 3 devices that have got medium priority actions against them. Sorry, 2 devices that have medium priority actions and 3 that have got high priority actions. So if we were coming to here and we wanted to get a quick overview of which devices we needed to look at from the SDS perspective, it's very easy for us to identify which of those devices we need to be looking at. And we'll come back to that in a bit more detail a bit later. For now, we're just going to select the SDS devices. And as you can see, most of these are in fact offline, which is why they're in red. There are a couple that are switched on. For us, SDS needs to be a key part of OneStop. We didn't want it to be a bolt-on. We didn't want it to be something that you had to go elsewhere to find the functionality. It needs to be key to the user experience, and that's what we've really worked hard to achieve. And to do that, we've implemented it in the context menus that are core to how OneStop works. So if we particularly this device, we right click, we can see I've got a number of options here: tagging, which we'll actually come on to later, job tickets, SDS operations, device operations, etc, etc. You can see some options, but here we have the SDS operations right in the middle of our portal, so right where we want them to be. You can see, as we've mentioned before, you have the option to reboot a device, look at the remote web UI, configure a device or run assess and remediate, console message, update firmware, manage the suppliers notifications. We can force a retrieval of event logs, we can force a retrieval of actions, and should we need to, we can process black box data. So how do these operations work? Well, we've tried to understand how a user of the system would actually potentially want to use these. So let's take an example. Maybe we want to reboot a device. We think there might be an issue with it. Users phoned in, mentioned something's not right, but they're printing at the moment. They don't want it switched off right now. So we want to reboot a device. Well, it's really a simple process. We select reboot device, and we now have the option, well, do you want to reboot now or do you want to schedule? Well, actually, I want to schedule it. I want to schedule it for tonight at let's say 7 o'clock, and I want to let the users know that it's going to be rebooted. So we're going to display a message just telling them that it's going to be rebooted later. So we're doing a reboot device reboot later. Now if I OK this would actually now display a message on the device console telling the user that it's going to be rebooted. At 7 o'clock it will issue a reboot command, and then subsequently will issue another command to clear the device message. So really trying to make the whole process as easy as possible, both for the end user so they know what's going on, and for the technician or the administrator who's running the system. One of the great features of SDS is the ability to manage firmware, and from within here we can decide we want to update the firmware. What's going to happen now is we're going to go away, talk to HP servers, find out what the latest version of firmware for this device is. It's immediately told us that we're not running the current version and gives us a list in chronological reverse order of the available firmware, so we could select any of those. And okay, that one looks interesting, let's select that, and we'll get a bit of a readme depending on how much information is available with that firmware to tell us a bit about what may be included, what's updated, and we can just double check the versions and build. Again, we can tell it to update now, or probably what we're going to do is schedule this update and again notify the user. If we decide we want to update multiple devices firmware, we're going to have a slightly different display. We're not going to go and have to pick the individual firmwares for each device. We're just going to have the option to update to either the latest version 4 or latest version 3. What'll happen when we do that is our software, the portal, will go away, and for each of those devices work out what the latest version of firmware is and schedule the installation of that specific version for that specific device. So it may be that two different devices have a slightly different version of Future Smart firmware. For that is the latest, we'll pick the correct version and schedule that for the installation. And again, it can be done now, scheduled, and we can notify the user. Batch updates are often something you'd want to do, or batch operations are something you may well want to do quite often, and really kind of brings the benefits of SDS to us as end users. So what sort of things we can do? Well, I've just showed you how we can select two devices and I can update the firmware, but how often am I going to be doing that? I'm probably more likely to have a slightly different scenario, and we'll give you an example. So say for example we've got some machines that are being moved at the weekend. There's someone's come to me, they've given me a list of half a dozen serial numbers and said, right, these devices, they're all being moved at the weekend from the finance department to the admin department at customer X. We need to update those devices so that the contact information on them reflects that they're now in a different department. Okay, so I could multiple select, but what happens if I've been told, well actually I'm not sure the list is complete yet, there might be another device, we're just waiting for confirmation. So one of the features we have is the ability to tag devices. This isn't specific to SDS, but we'll soon see how we can use this together with the SDS batch functionality to make things simple. So I'm just going to create a tag here, moving at weekend, and I'm going to tag this particular device. Now I happen to know that this device is also moving, so I'm going to apply that tag, and we'll apply that tag as well. Okay, now I'm waiting at the moment on somebody to come back to me and confirm whether that's all the devices or not. So how do I actually apply these bulk settings? Well, I've got a couple of options. If it's just one setting that I'm applying, then one of my options for any device is to configure an option here. I've got a list of some options, so basic forward, asset number, company contact name, and if it's just one of those half a dozen, I could just put that information in here, but I'm not really sure I want to do that. I'm actually going to want, in this case, to set up a couple of options and to save that potentially for later use. So under my settings option, I have for this particular group something called device settings profiles, and in here I can create a number of profiles with different information I want to apply to these devices. There are different types of profiles. One can be a straightforward config where I'm just going to go apply settings. We also have assess and remediate, which is an advanced feature of SDS which will actually go away and check settings and attempt to verify or change those settings if they're not up to date. And we have an essential security policy, which is very similar but based on a specific set of rules that HP have defined that are essentially, we believe your device should have these. And there are a minimum set of values that you can set, and if they're not set, we'll report back and say, hey, you need to do something about it. For now, I'm just going to do a simple configuration. I've set one up here, so if I edit the configuration I have here, the type of configuration is just a straightforward config data. I've given it a name and a description, and so basically I'm just saying I just want you to go away and set these values. Okay, I don't want you to do any assessment. I'm not using the essential security policy, which is a subset of the configuration data, and there are a number of additional fields I could add here, but actually I'm not interested in adding any of those. I'm just going to stick with the two I've got now. So I'm saying, right, set company contact to be Sarah Jones on extension 234, and I want you to update the device location to point to the accounts department. So this is the configuration I've saved. So I go back to my device view, and rather than selecting my just the SDS devices if I want, I can actually now go and select my tags devices, and here we see I've got a filter called moving at weekend, and if I select that, that now contains the 3 devices that I've tagged. However, I'm not convinced that this is going to be my final list, so for now I'm just going to clear my filter, go back to my list of SDS devices. And sure enough, somebody comes along with another device we need to add to the list. So we're just going to tag it. And then finally we have confirmation our list is complete. So let's select our filter. And you can see we've now got the 4 devices that we've tagged displayed. We're going to select them all, and then we are going to select our operation. So we select our configure, and we've already set our profile, as you recall, with our contact details that we want to use. So we're going to go down here and select it from our drop down list. Now at this point we have the option, as we'd expect, to update now or schedule it. Maybe we're going to want to run it over the weekend, so that once the machines are moved, the information will be updated. You'll notice that we don't have the option to display a console message. Well, that's because in this situation the action is being performed in the background. It's invisible to the user, so we don't need to let them know something's happening. So what we've tried to do with all our dialogues and all our menus is make them kind of context sensitive and intelligent. Let's only display and ask for the information that's relevant. So in this example we don't need to display a message, we're just doing an update in the background. So there's something less for the user to have to worry about. Okay, now these devices aren't mine, so obviously I'm not actually going to update them, but if I did, we would then be able to go away and look at the batch results. So we're just going to cancel that for now, and we're just going to go back to our device list. What happens at a later date? In a week's time, someone says, well, did you run that operation last week, and what happened? Now someone else has gone and messed with my tags, someone's maybe cleared the tags or we've added to that. So how do I find out which operations were included in that batch? Well, what I can do is from here, every time I create a batch, I get a new entry in my batch commands. This is generated automatically, so I don't have to do anything. Basically, as soon as I execute an SDS command for more than one device at the same time, OneStop will automatically create a batch for me, and it will have the date, time, and what the action was. And then I can filter on that. So this is one that I did a couple of days ago. We rebooted some devices. Now, when you perform an action within OneStop for SDS, we issue a device command. And what happens is we have a device commands tab. So again, right in the core of OneStop, you haven't got to go elsewhere to find out what happened. And I can see all of the commands that have been issued for this particular device. So I've filtered down. These are the 3 devices that were in my reboot batch on the 30th. And here we can see reboot success. And that tells me that worked fine. This one here, actually, reboot didn't work. I got a device communications error. Well, actually, to be perfectly honest, that doesn't surprise me. The device is switched off. But if I go to here, again, I can see this one was a success. So I can easily track down into the batches of actions or commands that I've issued, find out which ones worked, which ones didn't. I haven't got to try and remember which devices I performed a bulk action on, because the system will automatically group them and remember that for me and allow me to filter them. So what else can we do with SDS? Well, one of the really nice features is the remote UI. What this allows us to do without having a VPN or firewall ports open or anything like that is to actually launch a remote UI which will take us to the device's web browser. So we're just going to launch that now. I'll just click here, and in a new tab we'll launch, basically this is now trying to connect to device via SDS, and as I said, there's no firewalls being opened here. This is a standard device sitting somewhere in an HP lab in the UK. I've no idea how it's configured. I've no idea how the network is connected, and I don't need to worry about that. Basically, what I'm doing is launching from here the remote console, and here we can see now live the remote console for this particular device, and I can do everything now as if I were an admin actually on the customer's local network connected to this device. This functionality is really useful if we just want to check something on the device, maybe make an ad hoc change, maybe the customer's reported something, questioned something. We just want to have a quick look and just have a quick mooch around, and we can even sign in and change settings if we wanted to. So we could sign in as an admin and we have full access to the device for changing configuration, check usage, anything like that. What we're going to do now though is take that a step further, and we're actually going to use this to launch the remote control panel of the device and demonstrate the Report a Problem app. The Report a Problem app is something that we've enabled within for this particular customer on this particular device, and allows us, or allows the customer, to raise a call, raise an action within OneStop using SDS. So we're just going to kick the device into life. So again, remembering this is a device, we're now effectively at the console, but we're not, so it's all virtual. So let's select our on-device services, and what this allows us to do is, we have configured an application to run here, and our application is Report a Problem app. We can call it what we want. We can customize it with any image we want. This is obviously, we've chosen this for some reason. And we're going to select that, and that allows us then or allows our end users to raise a ticket. Now, the experience would normally be slightly quicker if the customer is in front of the device. So we're now going to we can see what problems have been reported, so we can actually check, has somebody already raised this? Let's have a look. If they have, great, we would know about it, but if not, the customer now has the opportunity to raise a new problem. So we're going to just report a new problem. We can select a category. Let's pick something, paper handling, severity high, our subcategory, ADF not working, please come and fix. Now, normally we are hoping the end user will give us a bit more detail, but if your experience is anything like mine, maybe not. So we're going to submit that. And then we're going to go back to OneStop. So as we flick back and look at our device, we can see immediately in our device actions that we now have a new action. It's a customer reported problem action, and it's type paper handling. And as we can see, we have the message that our user has typed, as helpful as ever. When we look at device actions, there's a number of things that we can do. So let's just have a look at the devices that have a high severity action outstanding at the moment. And let's pick this one here. So this is a predictive action that was raised by SDS. We can see it's a type for replace fuser, high severity, it's open, it's a predictive, so the predictive window is 30 days, a probability of 0.8, and if we hold over here we can see it's telling us what tools we need and what parts we need. If we click on the detailed information, it's going to take us to an HP page that's going to give us all the information we need in regards to fixing this problem. So it's going to give us confirm the parts, the tools, and we have the instructions and a video on what to do, which is really useful to ensure that we're going prepared. The idea that we're not going to have to go out, then realise that we haven't got the right parts, then realise we've sent the wrong engineer because they're not trained on this. We've got all of the information we need right here, which is really helpful. But what else can we do from here? Well, first off, we can update the status, and this will be useful for HP going forward, building up their knowledge on whether the predictive alerts that were raised were actually correct. So we can feed back to HP here and say, yes, it was correct, or no, it wasn't. And if we do feedback correct, we can basically say what parts we use, and that's all built into the ongoing development of the HP knowledge base. But we can also raise a job ticket here. So rather than us having to copy and paste, if I just select that, that's going to automatically create a job ticket in our system. So now we have a job ticket that I can assign to one of my technicians or to support person. Now, this particular device, we don't have any contact details set up because it's not actually one of our customers, but if we had those, they would automatically populate here, and we've got some information. So we haven't got to go through a process of copying and pasting. We can literally right click on the SDS action and create a job ticket within OneStop that we can then action and follow up. So we've talked about the majority of the SDS operations we can perform. There are a couple of others that we'll just take a look at. So we've looked at rebooting, the remote UI, see how useful that is, the configuration, console message. Now we've already seen how we can integrate that with or how it's automatically integrated with things such as reboot and update firmware, something that we may want to schedule. But we can also use it on its own, and we've got a couple of things here that are quite useful. So we can clear the message or display a message, we can show it now or schedule, but also we can have it automatically clear after a preset period of time or on a specific day or date and time. So it may be that at some point over the weekend we're going to be moving this device, so we're going to set a message to a user to say, hey look, this device might be switched off for a couple of hours, it's being moved, and then it will be cleared automatically on Sunday evening, because we know by then the task will have been formed. So it's not a case of setting a console message and then our user phoning up in 4 days time and saying, hey, what's this message on the screen, because we forgot to clear it. We can have the system handle that automatically. We can set it, make sure it's cleared automatically, and not have to worry about it. Another area we can manage is consumable notifications or supplies notifications. We all know that users can be a little enthusiastic when changing toners if they see the low toner alert come up on a device, quite often at maybe 15-20%. So one of the things we can do is we can actually change the notification level, or change what notifications are displayed on the device. So we can suppress the low toner message and delay a very low message, or even suppress the low and very low messages. So basically in that situation you won't get an alert until the device has run out. We can do this for standard consumables and high capacity consumables, and again we can do this for single or multiple devices. In this instance we don't have the option to schedule, because we feel it's something you're going to want to do now. There's no reason to delay implementing this. If you want to set this, you want to set it now. And again, there's no option to display a message on the console, because again it's something the user doesn't need to know about. As you can see from what we've shown you here, the SDS operations within OneStop are really key and integral. We've really made sure that you don't have to go elsewhere. It's not a separate process. You can manage the SDS and take advantage of the SDS functionality in exactly the same way as you would do anything else within OneStop. And that's really keen to us. And that includes looking at the actions, looking at event logs, raising job tickets, or performing anything like that. It's absolutely critical to us that to get the best out of SDS, it has to be a core part of OneStop, and that's really what we've aimed for. And hopefully this video has just given you an introduction as to how easy it is to take advantage of the SDS functionality using OneStop. Hopefully you found this video useful as an introduction into OneStop MPS Portal, HP Smart Device Services, and it's given you an idea as to the power of both products. If you'd like to find out more, please contact us, info@bits.uk.com, and we can set up a trial for you where you can experience how easy it is to use this functionality for yourself. Thank you very much for your time.